Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of me and Michelle's new podcast, Children of the Void. This is episode 1, and we are going to cover a really big case. This is going to be the case of Caylee Anthony. So I am Rachel Telfor.
And I am Michelle Gower.
And we are super excited to start this podcast. It's our first one. We did a lot of research on this. Obviously, all of our episodes aren't going to be popular cases, but we wanted to start with a bang to show you what we have. So, not to waste any time, we're going to start right in, and Michelle is going to start us off with the intro to this horrible, disgusting, infuriating, angry case that we're going to talk about.
Yes, what we are discussing is the epitome of dumpster fire parenting, police work, as well as justice.
All of it put together.
So many balls dropped. So it's it was a hot mess. Very infuriating for us to research it, especially being parents. Just knowing how in any of these circumstances, things could have been handled significantly differently, and the outcome would have definitely been more positive than, unfortunately, the death of a toddler. So
yeah. Well, and actually, before we start, so I am a mother of 2 sons, to give a little background, and Michelle.
Yeah, I have a daughter.
So we are both moms. I live in Florida, and Michelle lives in Ohio.
Unfortunately.
We met through our friend Morgan and his other podcast, my other podcast that I do, and we just really, really hit it off and have a passion about this. So we really hope that you guys enjoy and our passion comes through in these cases, and we'll see how it goes. We appreciate the support, and we're excited. We're really super excited to do this, but also I hate all of it.
Yes. It's a, what do they explain it as? It's a thankless job.
Yeah, exactly.
But if our efforts can kind of stir imagination and kind of light a fire under some people's butts, and their, amateur sleuthing is becoming, more effective at some of these, cases that went cold being solved than the actual detectives and, people who are trained in this kind of stuff. So in the event that anything we discussed, speaks to you and can motivate you to kind of help make a difference in someone's life, then we've done our job.
Like, don't fuck with cats. Those were amateur people.
Oh my God.
Right? Like, so that,
Yeah.
So the more we talk about it, and everyone's like, oh, how can we talk about this? Well, the more we talk about it, the more out there it is. So that's kind of our idea for this show.
It's our way of not letting those who went missing in the void disappear forever.
Correct.
If we keep bringing it up and keep educating, who knows who it's going to strike a chord with and who's going to know something and come forward
for the first time. Yeah.
Right.
So without further ado, let's jump in to the case of Caylee Anthony. Michelle.
All right, guys. So a little bit of background information regarding this case obviously is going to focus on Caylee's ridiculous excuse of a mother, Casey. Casey was born March 19th, 1986 in Warren, Ohio, to Cindy and George Anthony. She was described as being a bright, personable young girl, but she had issues with lying. Lying became kind of like something that she was known for that started significantly in high school. Her parents had attended her high school graduation along with her grandparents, for example, only to discover she technically hadn't graduated yet. But she had it in her head that even though she stopped attending classes and was, several credits short, that she was still going to be allowed to walk with her graduating class, which for anyone who's actually made it through high school, that's not how that happens. When she was 19, she kind of threw another huge lie out there, denying that her weight gain was because of her being pregnant. She claimed she was a virgin. And this went on for months. It basically got to the point where when she was so far along in her pregnancy, she basically had no other option but to tell her parents the truth. The identity of the baby's father, though, remained a mystery. Throughout her pregnancy, she was pointing to several men, including her fiance, Jesse Grund, as well as other men she had dated previously who, weirdly, a couple of those exes all died in car crashes. Not necessarily, related, but it was just weird when we were researching it.
Very strange.
Very. On August 9th, 2005, Caylee was born. And a friend of the family said that, Casey had discussed giving the baby up for adoption, but her mom discouraged it. For the next few years, Casey and Caylee lived with Casey's parents, and Grund, her fiance, acted as the baby's father. He even believed that Caylee might have been his baby, despite knowing that the timing of the conception made it improbable. And they decided to do a DNA test, which later confirmed that Grund was not Caylee's father. Even to this day, the identity of the father of Caylee remains unknown.
Which is mind-blowing to me. That's
and
one
unfortunately,
of the parts of this case that just I cannot comprehend.
Well,
how do we not know who the father is?
Right, and with the amount of DNA testing and stuff that's out there,
how?
That kind of stuff doesn't stay secret usually. So
yeah, and we're going to talk a lot more about that after we go through the facts of the case. So we're going to go through the facts of the case. A lot of people have heard of this, so we don't want to get super deep divey into it. We're going to give you kind of the overview, and then we're going to discuss what happened after the case and stuff like this. So stick with it. Okay, so we're going to go into the timeline leading up to the crime and the arrest. On June 9th, 2008, Casey Anthony and her daughter Caylee moved out of her parents' house. They moved out of Cindy and George's home, and she moved in with her ex-boyfriend, Ricardo Morales, and his friend, Amy,
Okay, so we apologize in advance.
Huizenga. There we go. Got it. Yes. Sorry. Okay. So that was June 9th, 2008. June 15th, 2008, Caylee was videotaped visiting an assisted living facility with her grandmother, or with Kaylee's grandmother, Cindy, that morning. They were visiting Cindy's father, so Casey's grandfather. Cindy took Caylee home to the Anthony's home where they lived with Casey and was swimming that day. It was noted that Cindy specifically said afterwards she removed the ladder and closed the gate to the pool. That is important for future reference. On June 16th, the day after, 2008, Caylee was last seen alive at the Anthony family residence. According to the defense, Caylee drowned in the family's above-ground swimming pool sometime during this day, and both Casey and George Anthony panicked upon finding the body and covered up her death. This is one of the many theories, but this is the one that the defense went with and hardcore went with. And again, we will discuss the reasons why that is absolutely ridiculous later. According to Casey Anthony's father, George, Casey left the family's house on June 16th, 2008, taking her daughter, who was almost 3 at the time, with her and did not return for 31 days. Casey's mother, Cindy, asked repeatedly during this time frame to see Caylee, but Casey claimed that she was too busy with a work assignment in Tampa. At other times, she said Caylee was with a nanny who Casey identified as Zenaida, quote, Zanny Fernandez Gonzalez, or she was at theme parks or at a beach. She was just kind of deflecting her mother and giving her excuses why she couldn't see Caylee. It was eventually determined that a woman named Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez did in fact exist, but that she had never met Casey. Caylee and any of the other members of the family had never ever met Zenaida or Zanny, the nanny. So this person that she said was watching Caylee was not known to her boyfriend, any of her friends, her family, her mom, her dad, but yet she stated that she was watching her daughter during this time, this 31 days that they were both missing. Huge red flags to me, but okay. And Michelle's going to continue.
All right. So continuing on the timeline, through July of 2008, Casey Anthony dodged her mother's request to see her and her daughter Caylee in person. Casey would tell her mom she was out of town with Caylee in tow, trying to rekindle an old relationship. Casey refused to allow Cindy Anthony to speak to Caylee on the phone. Cindy expected that they would return home over the 4th of July weekend, but alleged car troubles during an out-of-town excursion kept the family confined to Jacksonville, Florida through July 14th. On July 13th, 2008, Cindy and George received a letter saying that Casey's car was in it was actually George's car or Cindy's car, but regardless, the vehicle that Casey was supposed to have had was found in a tow yard. George went to pick the car up, and he found Casey's purse along with Caylee's car seat and her toys. When he got to the car, he noticed a strong smell like that of organic matter consistent with decomposition coming from the trunk. In layman's terms, it stunk to high hell. Being alarmed, Cindy found Casey at the home of her boyfriend, Tony Lazaro, and brought her back to the house. Casey broke down, telling her mother and her brother Lee that she left Caylee with the nanny in Orlando on June 16th, and that the nanny had actually kidnapped the toddler. Huge red flag. That alone just drives me insane. Later on July 15th, which would have been 31 days after Caylee's alleged disappearance, Cindy reported her missing to the Orange County Sheriff's Office. After questioning Anthony, detectives found discrepancies in a signed statement that she made about Caylee's disappearance. Casey's friends and family had never heard of Gonzalez, who was the nanny, and detectives later discovered, in fact, that there was no nanny. Boom. The investigators caught Anthony in another lie, where she told them that she worked at Universal Studios, even leading them around the theme park.
Oh my gosh, this is one of my favorite parts. She literally took them inside of Universal Studios, led them down hallways in the executive quarters, like she was waving at people, pretending she knew people. Everyone's like, what the hell is this girl doing here? And then eventually led them to a dead end.
She allegedly was trying to lead the cops to her old office.
Right.
And totally got lost.
Yeah. And ended up in a dead end and turned around and had to say, just kidding, I really don't work here.
Yeah. So she finally admitted after a long wild goose chase that she never actually returned to work for Universal. So it makes me wonder if she did work for them for a short while. But
she
not
did,
enough.
Actually. So
okay.
I learned that she didn't work for Universal. She worked for a outsourced company that took pictures when you walked in. The people that take pictures when you walk. Okay. So she did at one point work in Universal, but not for Universal.
Gotcha. Which would explain why she got lost.
Correct.
So after all those shenanigans ensued, Casey was arrested July 16th and charged the following day with giving false statements to law enforcement, child neglect, and obstruction of a criminal investigation. The judge denied bail, saying that Casey had shown woeful disregard for the welfare of her child. On August 21st, 2008, she was released from Orange County Jail after her $500,000 bond was posted by the nephew of California bail bondsman Leonard Padilla, in hopes that she would cooperate and Caylee would be found. And with that, Rachel, take it back.
All right. We're going to talk about the discovery. This is one of the most infuriating parts of this case. Okay. Roy Kronk. If you're not familiar with that name, then you really should go back and watch this documentaries and read about this story again, because holy shit. On August 11th, 12th, and 13th of 2008, Roy Kronk, who was a meter reader in Orange County, called. So he had actually pulled off the side of the road in what he said he was looking for a place to pee. Seriously. And he's like, I knew this place was covered. It was safe for me to go and step out and then pee outside because guys can do that. Good for you. We can't, but okay. So he pulled aside, went to pee on the side of the road, called police because he saw a suspicious object found in the very forested area, which was near the Anthony residence. On the first call, he was directed by the sheriff's office to call the tip line, which he did, receiving no return call. He's like, hey, I'm here. I see this suspicious thing. Not sure what it is. It's an object. No one answers. The second time, he again called the sheriff's office and eventually was met by 2 police officers. He reported that he had seen what appeared to be a skull near a gray bag. On that occasion, the officer conducted a short search and stated he did not see anything. When I say this, I'm not joking. 2 officers went out. They said because the area had been so searched before, because when Caylee originally went missing, there were thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that went out to search. This was a quarter of a mile from their home. So they kind of blew it off. They're like, okay, it was in the middle of summer. It's very swampy. It's very wet. It's very overgrown. And they're like, yeah, no, we don't see anything. No, we're good. So then so that was 3 calls, 11, 12, 13. Officers went out. They said they saw nothing. Roy Kronk moved about his business. 4 months later, on December 11th, after his initial calls, Kronk yet called the police again. He went out there. I think he was actually doing work, and he's like, all right, I'm out here again. This is still here. They searched and found the remains of a child in a trash bag. Investigative teams recovered duct tape, which was hanging from hair attached to the skull, and some tissue left on the skull. Over the next 4 days, bones were found in the wooded area near the spot where the remains initially had been discovered. On December 19th, 2008, medical examiner Jan Garagavlia, I'm going to say that,
Garavaglia? Maybe?
Garavaglia, thank you. Sorry, guys. Jan Garavaglia, because she really did not like Casey, though. I'll tell you that right now. She wasn't a fan. But she confirmed that the remains found were those of Caylee Anthony, and the death was ruled a homicide, and the cause of death listed was undetermined because there just wasn't enough of her left. It was really sad. So now we go into the fun stuff. Michelle, take it away.
All right, we are getting into the trial.
Boom, boom. Yes, I like that. Good sound effect. Add that in there. That dun dun. Like
oh
that.
no, I don't. We're gonna get a copyright.
You did that so good. I know, right?
I was just thinking of The Office when Michael Scott does it for his play audition. He does the whole skit. Okay, sorry guys.
This is serious, but we have to keep it light.
Yes.
Otherwise we'll go crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Got to stay sane somehow. All right. So as far as the trial goes, the prosecution presented 3 key pieces of evidence at the trial: a strand of Caylee's hair, traces of chloroform, and the odor of decomp, all found in the trunk of the car recovered by Casey Anthony's parents at the impound lot. The prosecution painted a picture of Anthony as a promiscuous party girl, unconcerned with her missing daughter and responsible for her murder. A website about the toxic chemical chloroform had been searched on the Anthony's home computer, a search that Cindy took responsibility for while she was on the stand, and chloroform was found in the trunk of Anthony's car. Casey's defense, led by Jose Baez and the co-attorney Cheney Mason, working pro bono, told a very different story. According to the defense, Caylee had drowned in the family's pool on June 16, 2008, and George Anthony covered up the death so that Casey wouldn't be charged with child neglect.
How do you go from, okay.
Speculation.
Yeah, okay.
It's a very important word to learn and know.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jose Baez shocked the courtroom with the alleged accusations that Casey's father, George, had in fact sexually abused Casey starting at age 8. The judge forbade Baez from directly addressing the allegations in court, as there was zero evidence or witnesses presented to corroborate this accusation.
So smoke screen.
Yeah, red herring.
You're just
deflecting, distractions. It's just, it's almost like justification of the cover up and why the people were involved and why Casey wasn't more involved with, she wasn't the one doing all the dirty work, Dad was.
Right. Exactly. Like, put it all on Dad.
Yes.
Oh, and he's just such a very interesting character in this case. The more I looked into it, I don't know. Right.
Well, wasn't she dating him after the fact, after the trial was over?
We'll get into that.
Okay.
Worry, my friend.
All right, Rachel, let's not jump the gun. Let's just continue on this gravy train of...
So the evidence.
Yes.
Okay. The evidence. There was a strand of hair. Caylee Anthony's skeleton was found on December 11th, 2008, having decomposed in a field among garbage bags for up to 6 months. Duct tape was found over her mouth, holding the jawbone to the rest of her skull. The placement of the duct tape was key in the prosecution's case for foul play. Further evidence would include a superimposition of Caylee's skull over her face to show that the placement of the duct tape, as it would have been before decomposition, it was potentially disturbing, especially when they put it in front of the jury, because essentially, like, the 3 pieces of duct tape were 6 to 9 inches long, and in the reconstruction would have literally covered her entire face. She was a 2-year-old child. So if you think about the size of duct tape, 3 pieces would go around my 8-year-old face. I mean, so what they had said, it had been used to suffocate her. Okay. However, no DNA evidence was collected from the tape. We'll get into that later. Second, there was a blanket that was found at the crime scene. This blanket was a Winnie the Pooh blanket, and it was part of Caylee's. She had a bedroom set, a Winnie the Pooh bedroom set, and it was sold as a package, and the sheet was part of that bedroom set that was missing from her home or her grandparents' home. So she was wrapped in that. The other was the chloroform in the trunk. So they performed chemical tests on the air, samples in the trunk, carpet samples, the spare tire cover, and scrapings from the wheel well of the car. Of the 30 or so chemicals they found in the research, only 5 were counted as 2 were, and 2 of them were trace amounts of chloroform. So there wasn't like a lot of chloroform. There were trace amounts of chloroform found in the trunk. And Voss, what was his first name? Sorry. But he testified at trial. The results indicated only decomposing remains would account for the odor in the trunk. He also testified that there were high levels of chloroform, but there weren't present in the samples. An important fact of the prosecution, which claims Anthony used chloroform on her daughter before smothering her. We'll go into that later because I have backup information. Witness John Dennis Bradley's software for computer investigations, so this is so great, was used by the prosecution to indicate that Casey had conducted extensive computer searches on the word chloroform 84 times to suggest that Anthony had planned to commit murder. He later discovered that a flaw in the system misread the forensic data and that the word chloroform had been searched for only 1 time. And the website in question offered information on the use of chloroform in the 19th century. Cindy, her mother, testified on trial that she was the one who Googled it, and she was attempting to search chlorophyll which led to the chloroform site. We will again address that in our later discussion. Really interesting. So the smell of decomposition in the trunk. I want to bring up in the 911 calls, and this is a huge thing that everyone knows. Cindy states in the 911 call when she calls on her daughter, Caylee, it smells like a dead body has been in the car. So she was calling the cops on her daughter. She's like, it smells like a damn dead body was in the car. She's a nurse. Okay? The smell of body decomposition, from what I hear, is irrefutable. Once you've smelled it, you know what it is. So I find it interesting that she said that, and then on stand says, she kind of takes it back and says, oh no, it was just like a rotting smell. So several aspects of the trunk smell were presented. There was a trash bag found in the trunk that was ruled out by technicians as being the source of the odor recognized by witnesses. A highly trained cadaver dog alerted on the trunk, indicating that a body had been stored within. The jury heard from Arpad Voss, the forensic he was an anthropologist, by the way, conducting research on the body farm on decomposition. I'll address, there was a study done on the cadaver dogs and the training of them after the case. We'll discuss later as well. We want to get through the case itself first. So, Michelle, take it away.
All right, guys. So this comes to the ever more frustrating part of this whole endeavor, and we are now at the verdict from the court case. July 1st, 2011. The defense spent their last few days on testimony from various players in the case, including the meter reader who found Caylee Anthony's remains in December of 2008. The defense claimed but let's not think about that just yet. Okay. The defense claimed he found the body far earlier and moved it to its final location to get a reward, a claim which he denied on the stand. This is going to be something that, again, we touch base on later. Mm-hmm. The closing arguments. So the state focused on Anthony's many lies throughout the period her daughter was missing, then discussed the items found with the body, claiming that they showed that a stranger could not have killed Caylee. They argued that the defense theory of the case of her dying accidentally in a drowning that was covered up by her grandfather was illogical. The defense emphasized holes in the prosecution's case, claiming they did not explain how Caylee died and were trying to play up the lying and partying on Anthony's part to play on the jury's emotions and turn them against her. They dismissed the explanation on Anthony's motives alleged by the prosecution that she felt her daughter was in the way of the lifestyle that she wanted.
Ooh.
It's awful. Yeah. On July 5th, 2011, the jury found Caylee not guilty of counts 1 through 3 regarding the first-degree murder, aggravated manslaughter of a child, and aggravated child abuse, while finding her guilty on counts 4 through 7 providing false information to law enforcement. Count 4 was when Anthony said she was employed at Universal Studios during 2008, pursuant to the investigation of a missing persons report. Mm-hmm. Count 5, Anthony said she had left Caylee at the apartment complex with a babysitter, causing law enforcement to pursue the missing babysitter, who again did not technically exist.
Correct.
Count 6, Anthony said she informed 2 employees of Universal Studios, Jeff Hopkins and Juliette Lewis of Universal, to the disappearance of Caylee.
Live.
And then count 7, Anthony said she received a phone call and spoke to Caylee on July 15th, 2008, causing law enforcement to expend further resources.
And that's important. Remember that.
So, on July 7th, 2011, sentencing arguments were heard. The defense asked for the sentencing to be based on 1 count of lying on the grounds that the offenses occurred as part of a single interview while police dealing with the same matter, the disappearance of Caylee, and as one continuous lie. The defense also argued for concurrent sentences, that is, for all 4 counts to become 1 count and the sentence to run together as one. The judge disagreed with the defense arguments, finding that Casey's statements consisted of 4 distinct separate lies, ordered the sentences to be served consecutively, noting that law enforcement expended a great deal of time, energy, and manpower looking for Caylee Anthony. The search went on from July through December over several months, trying to find Caylee. Judge Perry sentenced Casey to 1 year in county jail and $1,000 in fines for each of the 4 counts of providing false information to a law enforcement officer, the max penalty prescribed by the law. She served just over 1,040 days credit for time served, plus an additional credit for good behavior, which meant that her release from jail was on July 17th, 2011. 10 days
10
from the time she was sentenced.
10
days.
10 days is what this girl served. Mind blown. Mind blown.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to discuss now what kind of happened after the case. Things that were brought to light, evidence that was missed, all of our feelings about it, perhaps. So you mentioned earlier, Michelle,
Mm-hmm.
We were discussing Casey's behavior after the case. So yes, there was in fact, it was described in I watched, there was a documentary. It was What Really Happened. It was the Casey Anthony case 10 years later. It was done on CNN. I also want to reference documentary, The Case of Caylee Anthony, that was done. And it was alleged that she was having a relationship with her attorney during the trial, and that he almost had reign over her, and that she was, quote unquote, paying him his legal fees with sexual favors.
We call that quid pro quo. Quid pro quo. I can't talk today.
Quid pro quo. Yeah, no, you got it down, girl. So there were other people that attested to this in the documentary who said, yeah, the weirdness between them, like we saw her running from somebody alleged seeing her running naked from his office, giggling one day. I'm not kidding. This is, I swear to God. And there was one part where it was quoted that he had said that he had gotten her out of doing an interview that she didn't want to do because she was very uncomfortable, but he said that it would cost her a few blowjobs.
Ew.
Yeah. This is alleged. I'm not saying this is fact. You know, this is all in the stuff that I've researched, listened to, watched, poured over, but it's disgusting. And also kind of makes me feel bad for her in a way, because she was kind of put in, I don't, but I do. I don't know.
The thing that strikes me with it is she's damned if she does and damned if she doesn't. She already has this, confirmed history of repeated lying, and not just little lies, big lies. So in the event that this was something that was happening against her will, it's sort of a cry wolf scenario. Who's going to believe her? And maybe that's what Baez took advantage of, is he knew, if he knew the truth of what really happened and he wanted to spare her, what's a quick lay going to cost? Is it worth your freedom?
Right. And for her, yeah, I think possibly it is. So then, Michelle, why don't you talk about one of the very, 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 very explosive key evidence that the defense was not made privy to during the case that could have changed the course of this case.
Okay, so this was actually something that I discovered for the first time in my research. I don't remember. I've seen numerous documentaries as well, and I don't ever remember this part being touched upon.
Neither.
So I was super upset when I read this because it just pissed me off.
Yep, I was like, what?
So a local TV station decided to kind of do their own digging as far as Casey Anthony's case went, and as far as like the concept of how accurate the computer research was done to determine how many times like chloroform had come up in the search engine, because obviously it was foolproof, and they were wondering, was there something missed? Who dropped the ball? So evidence was later discovered after the case that the prosecution had knowledge of, but the defense did not have knowledge of a search for the term foolproof suffocation on the Anthony's computer the day Caylee disappeared.
The day she disappeared.
Yes, but they never knew about it because it was not one of the quote-unquote terms that they were trying to search. They only searched chloroform, meaning that the police, when they did their initial investigation, did not have the entire browser search history on record for themselves. Had they had it, the prosecution would have had access to it, and that would have been entered as a piece of key evidence.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, and the defense was kind of outraged when they found out about it. But the person that they used to search their history, like she said, only searched like one browser, so he didn't do a full search. And the prosecution had this information the entire time and did not, obviously. I mean, if you're holding your cards to your chest, you're not giving the defense you're not giving the defense the prosecution that information. You're not doing that.
But isn't that also illegal to withhold evidence like that?
That is a good question. That is a very good question. Okay. I thought that as well. Is that, I mean, don't you have to give?
Yeah, you're supposed to be able to, all our listeners out there who are involved in law, especially criminal law, please let us know. Please write to us and let us know, what your thoughts on this situation are. Because in our understandings, granted, I have very base knowledge of criminal justice as I went for a general degree in it, so I didn't specify in this kind of stuff. But I was always under the impression that you had to turn over all evidence at the beginning of the trial, and in the event that you found more evidence during the trial, it would be up to the judge whether it was admissible or not.
Correct. I also understand that from, obviously not a law professional, but over a decade of being obsessed with true crime, that if they know something, it has to be presented and the judge rules if it's admissible or not. But they did not know about it. But the defense did. The prosecution didn't. That's a problem. They could have, again, changed the whole case. That's a huge thing. It's mind-blowing to me. In regards to Roy Crunk, who was the guy who called 3 times, the meter reader, moving the body. 10 years later, they did a documentary. They did a study of how the body was found, the roots that had grown up around the skeleton. There's all kinds of wonderful forensic things that they can do. It is not possible that body was moved. It's just the doctor who did the examination said that decomposing body fluids would have impeded the growth of the flora and fauna below her, therefore confirming the fact that the body had been there for quite some time. The minimum period the body being there, he said, was 4 months, thus proving it was impossible for Roy Crunk to have removed the body and replaced it shortly before it was discovered in December. That rules that out. I like that. That's forensic science. That's plausible. That's, facts, right?
Right.
The root growth, it's grown through the bones. That's not a thing. They said, he was interested in the reward. He wasn't interested in the reward. He just wanted to call something out that was suspicious. And they just said he was a waste of their time. It was really, really sad. This could have been if they had found her sooner, maybe there was evidence that could have been collected.
Right.
4 months before he called the first 3 times. That's what bothers me. It's just all of it's infuriating.
Well, and you got to remember too, the decomposition rate in Florida is going to be significantly different than up north or even in the Midwest. You have humidity, you have high heat, you've got, the rainy season. Even being in a trash bag, decomp is going to happen a lot faster. Than it would if you had a winter season where the ground froze over, slowed everything down. So, essentially, for those of you who may not be familiar, when people die, or, it doesn't matter if you're murdered or die a natural death, your body goes through a natural decomposition phase where you will bloat because of all the gases trapped in your body because you're not normally breathing, burping, farting. You don't have a way for that to escape anymore. Right. And then eventually you're just going to your body muscles loosen. That's why they talk about people defecating themselves, urinating. All your bodily fluids just kind of eventually start. Yeah, you leak out. You turn into soup. And then depending on your exposure to the elements will determine, how quickly you are food for other animals or if the soup is eventually going to slowly dry itself out. And essentially, I think that's what happened in the garbage bag scenario. And liquids evaporate. If animals got a hold of the bag and tore it open, which would have exposed Caylee's body. Yeah. Yep. So that would just seep into the ground, essentially, and then that would be food for all of the plant fauna and stuff that would be growing in that area. And basically, it's natural, way of destroying the own evidence. And then once you have animal involvement, in the event that there was any past trauma to bones and things like that, it makes it harder to determine that.
Absolutely. And also to add to that, when her body was dumped, it was in the middle of summer in Florida, which I know a lot of fucking about. And a hurricane had recently come through. So it was swamp. And if y'all don't know what swamp is, there was a very, very large amount of growth in this area. You could not see, you can't see if there was something dumped in a little puddle. Kronk had to be right up on this to be able to even see anything, to be honest, because it's full of water. She probably was partly submerged in the water. It's very humid. It's very moist. It's very wet. It's full of vegetation. However, they did not find her until December. That is a completely different landscape. Everything had dried up. It was not the same as it was when she was dumped. So whoever dumped her there thought, ooh, this is a safe place because it's covered. It's full of green. It's wet. It's swamp. It all dries up and it's a completely different landscape in December. So I think, that's why he called. He's like, oh, shit, there really is something here. So there was just nothing left, which brings me to the duct tape and the fact that they didn't find DNA evidence on that. And Michelle, why do you think they didn't find DNA evidence on the duct tape?
Well, it would obviously be one of 2 reasons. The first being that the decomp happened and any exposure to outside elements would have destroyed any DNA evidence left on the duct tape. Or duct tape was put on post-mortem. It wasn't there when she died. Another red herring.
Yes. And Michelle and I have talked about this offline. So we can speculate. We have to be careful. Casey was, double jeopardy. She can't be tried for this again. I have my thoughts on what truly happened, especially after watching all the documentaries after this case happened, digging into everything that's happened since, what the parents have said since, what her own father has said since. But they think she suffocated from the duct tape. I don't think personally, my opinion, I don't think she suffocated from duct tape. I think she probably was unconscious, and duct tape was put over her to maybe conceal her face because she didn't want to, it wasn't wanting to be seen. It was too personal. What do you think?
That makes a lot of sense. In certain crimes that have happened, especially when it's someone familiar to the murderer, they will either disfigure the face or cover it completely so that, depending on how they died, in the event that the eyes were open, things like that, it can't mess with the murderer, as weird as that is.
Right. And then she was, wrapped in her Winnie the Pooh sheet. It's just...
there was a level of care.
Yeah.
It was her Pooh sheet. Her toys were found near her. Like,
what is that? So it wasn't just...
It wasn't a random dump, like a trucker found her, stole her, and did away with her. There was a level of thought that went into this dump scenario.
Correct. I 100% agree. I do agree. Also, I wanted to touch on the fact that the documentary that I watched that was 10 years later, they did an experiment with cadaver dogs because there was a inconsistency about whether the smell that was smelled in the trunk was trash of decomposing pizza or, a bag of trash that was found there, and that's what they had smelled, or a dead body. Well, the cadaver dogs that are trained are very specifically trained. So they did an experiment, this documentary did, and they went and saw these people who trained cadaver dogs, and they hid animal remains, like pieces of animal, in one car. They hid actual rotting pizza, legitimately, in another car, and pieces of not an actual body, but there were human organs or something like that. The dog immediately went to the human remains. They're trained to know the difference. So the fact that this dog pointed out that there was human remains in the back of that car, I believe the dog.
Right. Well, it's do we not remember that dogs get trained to be scent trackers?
Yeah.
They can track a live person through the woods. Yeah. Decomposition is significantly more intense, even for human noses, let alone a dog's, which is infinitely more sensitive. Why would we believe a dog to, follow an escapee through the woods, but not to a dead body?
Well, and they can even sense even a drop of human blood. So that can be that there could have been human blood. Okay, but still, they immediately went to this trunk and alerted that there was something wrong here. So that's a flag. That's evidence for me, in my opinion. So all of these things, it's just, okay. What else did we miss?
So my theory on what actually happened, since you kind of gave a little background on yours.
Yes. Well, I haven't gone into what I think really, really happened. But before we do that, no. I want to hear yours first. Go.
Okay. So, based on everything,
what is your professional podcast opinion?
Professional amateur podcast opinion.
Your professional amateur podcast opinion.
Our Papo. My Papo.
Oh my God. We're using that. Let me write that down.
Okay.
Oh my God. We're totally using that. Okay.
You're welcome. Our listeners are going to hate us. They're like, what the hell?
No, hopefully they love us. Please love us. This is our first episode.
Yeah. My Papo on what actually happened. So, as stated before, Casey Anthony's dad used to be a member of law enforcement. He and her mom was also a nurse. Her dad knows about death and decomp. He used to didn't he do investigations and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he's been around it. He knows it. He gets it. He's experienced that kind of situation. While I can't say for certain how she died, because there's just not enough evidence, and I mean, we could speculate all day and come up with every single, guess under the sun. I mean, maybe they're right, maybe they're not. It's not worth going into, in my opinion. My thing is, let's not focus on how she died. Let's focus on the fact that we have a dead 2-year-old in the woods close to home. Who around her would have the background experience and understanding of the area, the decomp process, things that would obviously not tie them to the scene of the crime, if that is even where it happened.
Right.
Who would know better how to plant a red herring than someone who was previously in law enforcement?
Yep.
And so my thing is, let's say it was a freak accident, or let's say Casey lost her shit, killed her kid, and decided to dump Caylee. How do we know that dad was not involved with the process of removing the body from wherever the actual crime scene was and dumping it in the woods where he knew it wouldn't be found for a long time? And
He's
how
a
do we
professional.
know? Yes, and how do we know that those still in law enforcement in Florida at the time, who he would have known and worked with previously, would not have his back and purposely botch the investigation to cover up the fact that one of their own did it?
There you go, girl. I like that theory. I mean, that you can't go. How many times in true crime, Michelle, have we heard about this happening? And I'm not saying this for all law enforcement. Obviously, there are wonderful cops, and we appreciate you. But there are
there is a lot of corruption out there.
There's a lot of corruption, man.
I remember,
to cover up for somebody your own.
And if you go against your own, you get it. I remember reading, I'm originally from Illinois. I remember reading about the corruption in the Chicago Police Department, and there was a team, it was a guy and a girl, and they found out how deep this corruption went, and they were threatening to whistleblow, and the other cops came forward and told them, you know, if you get in a situation where you're trapped, you know, you're in a shootout, nobody's coming to help you. We're going to leave you for dead, essentially, because you're dead to us. Because you're willing to undo this good thing, however illegal it was, that they had going on. By being an honest police officer.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've heard it. I mean,
Snitches
we all know.
Stitches, and that's the biggest piece of bullshit I've ever heard in my life.
Well, in Florida, snitches end up in ditches, so we take it a little further.
Well, yeah, because you got gators, you can get rid of them.
You're damn right. But no, that theory is, yep. I like that theory. I think that her father, I do also believe that her father was involved in some way, shape, or form. Go ahead.
I was going to say, he has, after everything went down with, you know, the trial and her being, you know, dropping the charges and not being convicted of the murder and things like that, her dad went through a period of depression and tried to commit suicide.
He did.
He went off the rails.
He sure did.
And it's like, you don't just go through that for no reason, especially after your daughter escaped a life in prison and or the death penalty or everything under the sun. Like, so what was it about the outcome of that case and the way everything, it just doesn't add up.
No, and afterwards, actually, he doesn't even speak to Casey anymore. So, you know, there has to be something that happened there. From what I've read, her friends, there were a couple of people that did allege that they had witnessed her previously, quote unquote, drugging Caylee to make her sleep so she could go out and party. Okay. These are alleged, but there are instances of it. Okay, so there were 100 witnesses and 33 days of testimony during this trial, by the way. I think she gave Caylee something to help her sleep. Again, alleged, guys, please don't sue me. I think that she gave something to help her sleep. I think she couldn't wake her up, probably freaked the hell out, thought she was dead, probably alerted her parents or her dad, who she probably trusted. I don't know. And somewhere along the lines of that, they were scared and acting under the terrifying, like, oh my God, what did I do? had to dispose instead of calling cops because you can't get out of that.
Right.
However, her actions 5 days later, being out at a club, getting a tattoo. What was it? Vita?
It's Beautiful Life.
Beautiful Life in Italian. I'm like, I'm sorry, even at 19, if I were to have a child who was missing and then found dead, you wouldn't be able to console me. I would be in a ball. I'd be in the fetal position. I would not be, no.
Right.
So there's something wrong with her head and her callousness of all of her interviews. There was no emotion. There was none. None. There was no emotion. So I think narcissist. I think spoiled, entitled. I do think that perhaps she, it was actually known she did not want to have the baby, but her mother forced her to. Her mother forced her into having the baby. So I think there was a little resentment there for taking away her youth, you know. But it's not about Casey. It's about the fact that a 2-year-old girl was murdered. Brutally, coldly murdered and thrown into a fucking swamp. And she didn't get justice.
She didn't get a chance to grow up.
She didn't get a chance to do shit. And all of her friends say she was such a smart, beautiful, bubbly girl. She'd walk into the friend's house, like her boyfriend, and they'd be like, oh my God, yeah, we loved her. She was so sweet. You know, she was so smart. She would just be the face on that child. And no one's gonna, how dare you? How dare anybody in that family, if you had anything to do with it, to not own up to it? Honestly.
Right. There's literally no words for the amount of anger and disgust. Like you can't properly express it.
You can't.
And
I'm physically sick to my stomach right now, like thinking about it.
As a parent, putting it into, taking it into our perspective, like if something happened to our kids, like you said, Rachel, we would be,
oh my God,
damn near inconsolable. I would have to have like a counselor or a suicide hotline person walking me through the fact that I need to get through.
I'm pretty sure I'd probably be Baker acted, to be honest, because I wouldn't feel I could go on.
Yeah.
Because I can't.
Yeah. They're your babies. That's part of you. You created them.
And don't give me the fact that she was young, because I know I have friends that had kids when they were young, and they were great mothers. And as soon as you become a mother, that is either instinctually in you or it's not. Unfortunately for Casey, it wasn't.
And unfortunately for
Caylee, let me rephrase that. Unfortunately for Caylee, because fuck Casey, to be honest, fuck her. I don't care. I said it and I'll say it again. This poor child did not get any resolution, and she didn't get a life, and it hurts me, which is actually going to bring me to some final thoughts. So Michelle,
yes,
why do you think, with what was presented, the prosecution would go after first-degree murder? In your, like, you kind of are in the criminal justice field, so like, with what was presented, okay, circumstantial, right? We didn't have any. Do we have any real physical evidence?
It was all trace. It was trace. Which means it's under a microscope amounts. Not enough. Like if you were to have trace amounts of DNA, you may not be able to get a full DNA profile if you were attacked, in rape cases.
And we didn't even have that.
Right. That might not. Yeah. No. Not. There was no, to our knowledge, any sexual assault, anything like that.
Why?
I think initially because of the horrendousness of the find when they did find her remains and the fact that she had been missing for so long, it initially started that the state wanted to prove she was a shit parent, and they were going to basically throw the book at her and make her an example of, if you fuck up and don't take care of your kids and allow these things to happen, you don't get a second chance.
I think they got a little bit too cocky. Cocky is not the right word. I didn't think they understood the gravity of the situation they were walking into, and then they were already too deep in
to back out.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I definitely.
Because going for a first degree,
degree
penalty. Death penalty.
Yes.
They were going for that. That's, you have nothing. You can't go for a death penalty. You have very weak circumstantial evidence that Jose Baez shit all over.
Right. And all it does is all the prosecution needed to do was plant that seed of doubt.
Yep.
Or the defense, whoever, that's all they had.
It's the burden of it is the burden of the prosecution. No, I'm sorry, of the defense. Wait, Rachel, stop talking. Who's it the burden of? God damn it. That's it. Our whole entire podcast has ended now. Thank you very much. I just ruined it. The burden of proof.
Yes, that sounds right.
Yeah. The burden of proof is on the prosecution. The prosecution.
The defense has to plant the seed of doubt. That's all they have to do. They have to, if they can get the jury to kind of be like, well, that's it.
So the burden of proof lays on the prosecution, and the prosecution did a horrible job.
And, after the fact, some of those jurors came forward and were like, I didn't feel comfortable weighing in on that verdict like I did. And it guilts them. It still haunts them years later. It's 10 years later.
I have some quotes, actually. Yes. But I'm going to save those quotes for the end. So, why did the prosecution go after first degree? I like your answer. I think they did want to make an example of her. Very, just a very, very public. It was a very public trial. They had a hard time finding an impartial jury because obviously everyone knew what was going on. The publicity of it. Also, going back and watching these documentaries and listening to what people said pissed me off. It wasn't about Caylee. It was all about Casey.
Yeah.
What's she wearing today? What does she look like? Oh, she's pretty. Oh, fuck that. What about the 2-year-old that's dead?
She was pretty.
She was gorgeous.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm so glad.
And that's the thing with these high profile cases like this. The same shit happened back in the day with O.J. Simpson's trial. It was too big. It was blown out of its britches. And when you put that much spotlight on, a court case like that, it makes it infinitely harder for the lawyers and the prosecutors and defendants to do their jobs effectively, regardless what side they're on.
You're in the public eye. I honestly think I don't think that media should be allowed in the courtroom. I really don't.
There's no need for it. That's why they have people who take notes. The stenographers.
That's why we have stenographers. It's not necessary. How can you pay attention when there's a damn spectacle going on around you?
And someone said they're drawing a fucking picture of the courtroom. Who gives a shit?
Who gives a fuck? We're not here for that. We're here to
I can understand back in the day before, normal media and print.
Back in 1843 when we're doing.
Let me finish the wood chisel real quick. Sit still for another 4 hours. We'll get it. It's probably gonna take that long doing this shit anyway.
You've already been. You're a witch. You're already sentenced to burn. Fine.
I'm gonna start making the fire now. Just get a head start. But no, there were so many opportunities for this case to have been handled differently and end differently. Do I think Caylee's death could have been avoided? Yes, but that's a whole nother set of circumstances. At this point, unfortunately, we cannot turn back time to prevent her death. But moving forward, if we can prevent the deaths, or at least the sufferings of the families of others who encounter similar situations, that's what we're here for and what we want to figure out. You know, do we think Caylee Anthony's family legitimately wonder and worry and want closure? I'm sure some of them do, but I think it's important for everyone to know. You know, this could happen to anybody.
Absolutely.
This case was such a huge impact on, you know, the media, and I mean, this was only 10 years ago. I remember
Isn't that crazy?
watching this. It's been a long 10 years.
It's been a long 10 years.
Long 10 years. But the one little beam of light coming out of the void that was the scenario was after the trial, they adapted Caylee's law. And it basically made it so that parents had to notify law enforcement of the death or disappearance of a child and make a parent or guardian's failure to report the missing child a felony.
Correct.
There was a petition on change.org for this that had almost 1.3 million electronic signatures in response to this. And there have been other petitions, and lawmakers in Florida, Oklahoma, New York, North Carolina, Ohio, and West Virginia have their own versions of Caylee's law that are being drafted. It's one of the only good things Ohio's doing right now. Good job.
Yeah, Ohio.
Yeah, let's do something for the kids.
And Florida enacted, it is Florida House Bill 37, aka Caylee's Law, and it is it was effective October 1st, 2012, and it is knowingly and willfully giving false information to a law enforcement officer. Provides that it is a third-degree felony for a person to knowingly and willfully give false information to law enforcement officer conducting missing persons investigations involving children 16 years of age or younger, with intent to mislead officers or impede investigation if children suffers great bodily harm, permanent disability, permanent disfigurement, or death. Because a lot of fucking time and effort was wasted because of the lies of her and the family. I don't have words. But also, I am going to quote one of the jurors, 10 years. This is in one of the documentaries that I watched. It was 10 years after the fact. He had quoted this. He said, generally, none of us liked Casey Anthony at all. A male juror from the case told people in the recent interview that was done then. She seems like a horrible person, but the prosecutors did not give us enough evidence to convict. They gave us a lot of stuff that makes us think that she probably did something wrong, but not beyond a reasonable doubt. Quote, my decision haunts me to this day, he continued. I think now if I were to do it over again, I'd push harder to convict her of one of the lesser charges like aggravated manslaughter, at least that, or child abuse. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and I didn't stand up for what I believed in at the time. Every time I see her face or her name, I get a pit in my stomach, the man admitted. It all comes flooding back. I think about those pictures of the baby's remains that they showed us in court. I remember Casey. I even remember the smell of the courtroom. I think that's a good place to...
Way to go, Casey. Your shitty parenting gave some poor innocent man PTSD.
For the rest of his life.
On top of everything else.
It's not funny. That's horrible. So, Michelle. That was our first case. We started out hardcore.
It was a lot.
It's a lot. I'm emotionally very drained, to be honest.
Yes, emotional roller coaster. Lots of anger. Coping mechanisms starting to kick in. I want to get funny just to lighten the mood. It's awful.
Going through this the past couple weeks has been a little hard, but we're not gonna, like I said at the beginning, we are not gonna focus on big cases. We actually, if anybody has gone through any missing children, or children that have passed that you feel have not gotten justice, or you want us to dig deeper into it, or you want awareness known to it, or you want light shown on it, then you can send an email to our producer, Morgan, and his email is rectormedia, that's R-E-C as in cat, T as in Tom, O-R media, all one word, at gmail.com. Michelle and I are really passionate about this. We're not taking it lightly. We are gonna do our best to dig deep, get as many answers as we can. We're open to interviews. We're open to literally draw light on these babies that have been lost in the void. I can't. I don't want it. I just want to do something to help. And I know Michelle feels the same way.
If we can prevent other children from becoming Caylee Anthony or otherwise, why not?
Absolutely. It just hurts. It pulls on our heartstrings, and I'm sure you like me, because we're true crime fans, are like, how do you listen to this? I'm like, listen, I listen to this because everything I know is one thing more. I'd rather know than not know, that
Right.
I'm aware.
Ignorance is bliss.
Nope.
But it
Ignorance
also
is
makes
not
it easy
knowing.
for you. Ignorance is bliss, but it also can potentially make you a victim.
Exactly. Perfectly stated. Yep.
Knowledge is power. Do not be afraid to dig deep and uncover the things that hurt you or scare you, because we're doing this for you guys. This is for all of us, for the mommies, the daddies, godparents, people who don't even have kids, who love their families, everyone. We all have people in our lives who we know if something were to happen to them, we would never be the same.
Absolutely.
And if,
beautifully stated.
If we can at least enter the void with you on your journey and support you and, just give you second opinions, we're the amateurs here. We're the amateur sleuths, but,
we're Papo.
We are Papo. But we are here for you.
Our professional amateur podcast opinion.
Yes. We will provide you with as much Papo and support as you need.
And you gave me goosebumps, so thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
So we're going to come up with like a signature sign off, but we haven't really thought of it, and I really want it to be cool, so that will come next time. It has to be thought out.
But until then, join us next time as we venture back into the void to hopefully shed light on another missing persons case and bring these babies home.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please like and subscribe to any of wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Leader One Studios is our producer, and Michelle and I both also help produce. So we really hope you guys enjoyed, and we very much look forward to our next case.
Thank you guys for all of your love and support so far, and we will talk to you soon.
See you soon. Thank you so much.